Envision what your portfolio is going to look like if stocks drop 30%. Now, that's not a prediction, but I've seen it. You know what? That's part of life as an investor. I don't want people to be so shocked by this decline that they start ripping their portfolio apart.
Is this really the best time ever to be a do-it-yourself investor? Is this the golden age of investing? Fees are lower, tools are better, and investors just have more choice now than they ever did before. Today, I'm joined by Rob Carrick. Rob is a personal finance columnist for the Globe and Mail, and he's also Canada's personal finance explainer-in-chief. I love that title. Rob has been covering the personal finance space here in Canada for over 30 years, and today he is going to break down what's changed and what really matters for do-it-yourself investors right now. And as a reminder, today, Rob and I, we aren't providing any investment advice or investment recommendations or tax advice. Today's show, as all our shows are all about investment education for Canadian do-it-yourself investors. Rob, thanks so much for joining the channel today.
Glad to do it.
So, Rob, you recently wrote on your Substack about why now is, you think, the best time ever to be a do-it-yourself investor, given the pace of improvement in the digital investing world. What have you seen in the last 30 years covering this space? How have things evolved and changed?
Okay, when I started writing about DIY investing, you would use what's called a discount broker, and the discount was paying $30 a trade. And even back then, it was a considerable amount of money. It was sort of something that was more for the more affluent type of investor, experienced, savvy person who didn't mind paying $30 a pop. Prices went down about $10, and now we are starting to see a growing momentum towards some degree of zero commission trading for ETFs or stocks or both. And that's a huge win, especially for the small rookie entry-level investor, not to have that trade cost friction in there. And another fee that's disappearing is the small account fee. You know, like brokers have traditionally wanted to discourage people from having assets of less than 15, 20, 25,000. So they slap on a $25 per quarter. They would call it inactivity fee or maintenance fee or whatever. Those are starting to disappear as well. And so as an entry-level investor can get in thinking, I'll focus on what I'm investing in and the products and not on the fees my broker's charging. I think that's a huge win.
It is a big win. And we've talked about how, rising prices are everywhere. We can't escape them. But here's an area of the market where things are actually getting so much less expensive. It's great to see.
It's a great point. There is reverse inflation. There's deflation in the DIY investing market. And, deflation in the broader economy is a very bad thing. It means the economy is in terrible shape, but it means the investing industry is in great shape because competition is working. Over my career, I was always told that competition will happen when the players get really big and there's either a fighting for market share, and it happened in some corners, but not a lot. Like mutual fund industry, I never really saw it happen. But in ETFs and in investing apps and online brokers, it's happening at this moment. There's probably somebody in an office somewhere thinking, what fees can we cut?
It's great to see for investors because really those fee cuts, that hopefully goes back into their pocket, back into their savings, and will help them get those wealth goals sooner than not. What about from a product perspective? So you mentioned mutual funds. I'm sure when you started covering this space about 30 years ago, there were only a handful of mutual funds available to retail and direct investors. But today, that space has really changed. So how have you seen that evolve?
Well, when I started writing my personal finance column and writing about investing, the mutual fund industry was at its peak. It was peak mutual fund. The Globe and Mail used to do an insert in the paper, a monthly paper insert that was called update on mutual funds or whatever, and it would sell out. Like you couldn't go to a box on the corner. Yes, that used to be a thing. Newspapers in a box on the corner, and you'd put your quarter in. You couldn't get one. That's how popular mutual funds are. Whatever you think is a hot investment today, mutual funds back then were even more popular. But I think investors started to get wise to the costs of mutual funds. The mutual fund costs have come down. Let's be fair to the mutual fund industry. They have cut costs, but ETFs came along and they built this franchise on indexing, clean reflection of broad stock indexes in your portfolio, realizing that a lot of mutual funds can't live up to what indexes produce, and indexes investing just cost a lot less. And we've built this sort of parallel universe of DIY investing with ETFs and it's really taken off. And I was around when there were 2, 3 ETFs in the whole world, a couple in Canada and a couple in the US. And now there's just tens of thousands, and probably too many, but that's another story. But the fact is that if you want to be a cost conscious DIY investor, what a great time. ETFs are your friend.
Absolutely. And ETF really putting that downward pressure on the mutual fund space to get just overall costs lower. Again, like such a great story with the ETF space. Where do you see the biggest opportunities, I guess, in the ETF space for do it yourself investors? I know you talk a lot about asset allocation ETFs.
Asset allocation ETFs are maybe one of the best products I've ever seen introduced in my whole career. Like, I look at what does good for the investor, what will create good outcomes most of the time if used properly. Asset allocation ETFs are fantastic. They are a well-diversified portfolio in a box, a single ticket purchase, as they like to say in the industry. You got your bonds, your Canadian stocks, your US stocks, your international stocks, maybe some emerging markets, maybe some other interesting odds and ends, because some of the companies like to differentiate themselves, which is fine, because it's always a very small, contained little segment in something a little bit out there. Usually the core is all the important stuff. And you think, I'm an aggressive investor. Well, there's an asset allocation ETF for you. I'm more balanced. Yep, there's one for you. And if you're conservative, that's good. And if you're a full on risk, I only want equities, well, there's an asset allocation ETF that just spreads your money out over global stock markets. It is a great way to invest. Just shovel money into that. Make sure you're in the right fund for the right phase of life, because you'll want to maybe get less aggressive as you approach retirement. All you need to do.
Yeah, it really is a great innovation for do-it-yourself investors who really don't want to think about their investments. They want that diversification and a low-fee product. And there you go. Asset allocation ETFs are there to help them out. We've talked in depth, Rob, about the vast majority of do-it-yourself investors really came to the market about, let's call it 5 or 6 years ago, and they've never really seen or invested through a market recession or correction. Even in those early days of the pandemic when the market dropped, it dropped briefly. We saw that V-shape, that nice V-shaped recovery. Actually looked up, the S&P 500 returned 18% in 2020. So not a bad year at all. What are you saying to direct investors about how they should be thinking about their investments, knowing that, in the equity markets, a correction is always a possibility and, perhaps maybe looming now more than ever?
I would encourage people to do a couple things. One, envision what your portfolio is going to look like if stocks drop 30%. Now, that's not a prediction that they will drop 30%, but I've seen it. I've seen worse. Peak to trough, I've seen 40%. I think that was roughly what happened in 08, 09. So introduce your mind to the idea of your portfolio getting whacked. You know what? That's part of life as an investor. It doesn't mean you did something wrong. It's just part of life. And you know what? Holding your ground through that and waiting for the recovery is part of being a smart long-term investor. But I don't want people to be so shocked by this decline that they start doing things like ripping their portfolio apart and selling their equities because they're way down. You have to prepare your mind for this downturn, while also looking at what's your diversification level. A lot of people probably let stocks run in their portfolio, and they probably got way more stocks in it than they thought they did. The bond allocation is probably hasn't only grown a little bit. Stocks are growing a lot. If you thought you were 70-30, you might be 80-20. Well, rebalance. Take some profits on your equity holdings and move them into your fixed income holdings. If you like the idea of having some cash, maybe 5, even 10, maybe 10% in cash, get yourself a good cash equivalent product like a money market fund or that sort of thing. Earn your 1.5, maybe reaching up to 2% on your cash, and be mindful that stocks can fall. What does that mean to me? They will fall. I guarantee it. They will fall. I mean, we've had an incredible run. I think a lot of investors may be seeing the best bull market they're ever going to see in their lives over the past 5 years. 2022 was a down year, but in aggregate, the past 5 years were fantastic. It has to end. I want people to start visualizing what it's going to look like and preparing their minds so that they're not sort of shocked into this feeling. I got to do something. I better sell. I better protect my portfolio.
Yeah, I talk about this a lot with investors. Investors are always thinking about the reward side of the portfolio, the growth and the earnings, but you have to take into account the risk side of the portfolio because you're not just managing your returns, you have to manage your risk too. So reviewing your risk profile. And I love what you say about that mental exercise of what would your portfolio look like if it dropped 30%. And if you're only owning single equities, it could drop a lot more, theoretically to zero. At least a diversified ETF, broad markets don't all drop to zero. That would be catastrophe. So, Rob, my last question for you is about retirement. And this is a really popular topic for direct investors, because all direct investors are usually saving for that one goal of retirement. And now you're experiencing the direct investor perspective as a retiree. So what have you learned in these first few years of living off your investments? And then what would you suggest to someone nearing retirement, maybe 5 or 10 years out, to kind of get them ready for taking that next step?
Someone who's about 5 years out, I would tell them it's go time for retirement saving. You're at your peak earnings. You probably got a lot, or hopefully you have a lot of your debt paid off. And so that money that previously went to your mortgage or other things, or maybe you're just finishing off your mortgage, start piling that money directly into retirement savings. Do your last work for topping up your savings as much as possible. I have RRSPs and I have TFSAs and I have non-registered. I really love the TFSA money. So I would really encourage people to, who are looking ahead to retirement, top up the RRSPs. You're going to love the idea of being able to pull money out of a TFSA tax-free, and you can put it back later. An RRSP, there's this big tax hit on it, which is fair because you got the tax break when you made the contribution. It's only fair you pay the tax on withdrawal, but TFSAs are so friction-free. And when you get into retirement, it's a different headspace, drawing down as opposed to saving. Like, I still think I should be saving. Well, I made some money. I should save some of it. But no, I've done the saving. Now it's all about getting your mind around optimizing your saving, withdrawing it in a tax efficient way, and living off it. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. You save for decades. I'm talking to myself here. Now it's time to enjoy the benefits of having done that. But it's an adjustment, and people can't change their financial habits on a dime in retirement. If you were a frugal person and you save well for retirement, you probably aren't going to be a free spending retiree. So I think talk yourself through it. Like, what is my retirement going to be like, and coach yourself to spend and enjoy what you saved.
Can we talk about CPP quickly? Because you've given me some points around that, and I know that's a pretty hot topic. And I actually did see in the Globe and Mail this morning that Canadians are tapping into their CPP a little bit later. Why would that be kind of a benefit for someone using CPP?
Well, if you delay till as late as 70 versus 65, you get a very substantial annualized bonus in your payments. Your retirement benefit grows, and it's a guaranteed growth, and it's guaranteed to last as long as you live. Now, a lot of people, the standard age is 65. You can take it as early as 60, and many people do. They think, oh, I don't know how long we're going to live. I don't trust the CPP. I want to get my hands on that money. But you take a cut to take it early. You get the standard amount at 65, and you get this extra bonus amount at 70. And a lot of people are waking up to the fact that I can use some of my own personal savings to bridge me to 70. And at 70, I get this much bigger CPP. It's inflation adjusted every year. It's going to last as long as I live. I don't know if my savings will last as long as I live, but I know my CPP will. I personally, a long experience in the financial sector, I trust the CPP. You should too. Don't be worrying about that. Anyway, that's why I'm sort of substituting my savings for government money. Well, it's not even government money. It's the CPP. It's separate from government. And I'm quite confident that will last me as long as I need it. And I personally am waiting till 70. I'm 63. I'm waiting till 70.
Yeah, I saw that age trending up, Canadians tapping in a little later, maybe big in part to all the education you've been providing, Rob, to Canadians all these years. So thank you so much for coming on the channel, and thank you just for empowering Canadian investors to do this themselves, because the education that you're providing is so valuable to Canadians. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Ted. Thanks, Ted. No, glad to chat with you.
And that's it for us at ETF Market Insights. We'll see you next week.